Good evening, Democrats. Hello. Woo.
Good evening.
Hi. Welcome to our meeting. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Okay. Welcome. It's been quite a month. I think we can all agree. I'm kind of torn because I can't decide whether I want Trump to get arrested and do a perp walk, or stay in the election so we could beat him a second time. If only we could do both. Anyway, welcome to our meeting. We're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance led by the mother of Trinity Dubrow, Robin Dubrow.
Okay, ready, begin.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
So our first order of business is to approve the agenda. I will make one kind of important caveat that should say San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention. That one word really changed the whole tenor of this thing. So I apologize for that. But with that addendum, will anybody approve the agenda? Jessica's moved. A second? Okay. All right.
Who was the second?
I have a piece of kale caught in my throat. Okay. Again, those of you that did not hear before, our newsletter is now purely 100% digital. If you have any questions or issues with that, please see me. We want to make sure that everybody can get the agenda or the newsletter. Everybody should. Now we have our new board member. The board has met with and has approved, and she's here for your ratification, Trinity Dubrow. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi everyone. Good evening. I just want to start off. My name is Trinity. I want to thank the board for allowing me to come up and speak and introduce myself today. I grew up here in La Mesa. I went to Lemon Avenue Elementary, then Parkway, then Grossmont. I've been interested in politics for as long as I can remember. Particularly the 2016 election was kind of what got me up and running and interested. I was not old enough to vote yet, but I went to school and like Bernie Sanders merch from the campaign, and I would start all these political arguments with my classmates, and my teachers really loved that, by the way. And so, that was really what kicked it off, and I decided to do my education at San Francisco State University. I studied health education, and in my health education degree, I learned about community organizing, health policy, and writing grants and program writing, specifically for healthcare. And now I work for a Medi-Cal program called Enhanced Care Management. It's a really cool opportunity where I get to do care management for underprivileged people who are on Medi-Cal and have a lot more social barriers than we all do. So really, really awesome program. But yeah, I'm here because I have a unique perspective that I would really love to bring to everybody, but also I'm interested in hearing from the perspectives of others. And overall, I think we just need to stop making politics so scary. Let's make things welcoming. And so, that's what I want to do. I hope you'll have me. Thank you.
Okay, she has not been told. I'm going to ask her this. Trinity, why are you a Democrat?
Because I care about other people. Yeah, I mean, that's basics. I can add more to it.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So I will entertain a motion to approve Trinity as our new board member.
So moved.
By Miriam Plotkin. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Okay, Max. Is there any discussion or comments? Yes.
Can we clone her?
No, but she does have 2 younger sisters.
I'll get them to come next time.
Any other questions, issues? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, she is now approved. Welcome to the board. And you can't win the 50-50 if you don't play. And I would like to get some more money, so I bought the winning ticket, sorry, but yeah, those of you that want to give me more money, feel free. We do split the money. Half of the money goes to the winner, half of it stays in our treasury, which is a challenge, our budget, but we're on top of it. I'm going to introduce Janet, who's going to start tonight's program with the San Diego for Gun Violence Prevention.
Yeah.
So tonight we have 2 excellent speakers from San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention. We all need to be thinking about ways that we, as individuals and as members of our various organizations, including this one, can support efforts to address the gun violence epidemic we are witnessing right now in this country. First of all, Therese Heimer is an attorney who has been active in San Diego for gun violence prevention since 2017. She currently serves on the board and leads its legislation and advocacy team. Therese's legal practice included 12 years in employment law and 9 years as general counsel and vice president of human resources at Clark Security Products. She currently serves on the High Tech High Foundation Board and was past president of the Explorer Elementary Charter School Board of Directors. Ms. Heimer received a Bachelor's of Science in Economics from Miami University in 1983 and a Juris Doctorate from Stanford University in 1986. And Carol Landale serves as Vice President of San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention. Her involvement in the gun violence prevention movement began after the Sandy Hook massacre in 2012. She had just retired from teaching, and the horror of that shooting moved her to get involved. Carol, who hails from the United Kingdom, taught high school and middle school, and when not working on gun violence prevention issues, she enjoys traveling, hiking, and yoga. With that, I will turn the stage over to Therese and Carol. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you so much, and thank you, Dems, for having us here this evening. So,
You want to stand, or there's the mic that works on the table too, if you want.
I'm good here,
Okay.
but thank you. If everyone can hear me, okay? If this is all good. All right, so I'll just stay here. I'm a teacher. Or I used to be, anyway. So I'm Carol, and yes, I've been doing this now, going on for 11 years, and honestly, it's got so much worse. When I first started off, right after Sandy Hook, 2013, I got involved, and at that time, yes, people were aware that shooting was a problem in this country, but now it's just gone overboard, and there are been so many more shootings, mass shootings, that and people are much more aware. So that's a good thing. The awareness has grown. The bad thing is the shootings have got worse. However, we are making progress, especially in California, where we do have some of the strongest gun laws in the country. And, yeah. And Therese is going to be talking more about that later on. But I wanted to share something that came my way just today on the national front. Right now, as we speak, Newtown Action Alliance, with whom we do a lot of work, is sitting out there on the lawn in DC, along with Ban Assault Weapons Now, BORN. And they are staging the sit-in to protest the lack of progress at the national level on the assault weapons. So here's the good news. Guess what? Senator Ossoff from Georgia has now agreed to sign on to Senate Bill 25, the assault weapons ban. So that's because they're sitting out there protesting. But along the way, there have been various representatives coming by the protest. amongst them Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she saw them and she went running by and she lost her shoe on the way. So I just had to pass that on. They had a video of her running past the protesters. So as of today, and I looked this up just before I got here, there have been 18,463 gun deaths in this country. That puts us on the trajectory for 44,000 plus this year. We used to commemorate mass shootings. We had them on our calendar, and on that day that there'd been a mass shooting, we would bring it to everyone's attention. We don't do that anymore. It's every day. So we cannot, it's really sad that we can no longer honor those who have been killed in a mass shooting. There have been 279 so far this year, and just one this last weekend at a graduation in Virginia. So this is a uniquely American experience, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our organization and what you can all do to support us in our bid to bring an end to gun violence. Sandhurst for Gun Violence Prevention began in 2018. What was happening then, I had been working with Brady, United Against Gun Violence, and we had a chapter in San Diego. Moms Demand Action came on board, and so we found out that here we are in San Diego, both of us doing kind of pretty much the same work. So we joined together and formed the coalition, which now has 17 members in it. So 3 members at the national level, Brady United Against Gun Violence, Moms, and also Survivors Empowered, all now working at the national level on gun violence prevention. At the local level, we've got 3 organizations that I'd like to highlight that work with gang violence intervention and prevention, and they are Shafat Outreach and Community Wraparound. And so we support them at their events and in the work that they are doing to prevent gang violence, largely in Southeast San Diego. We have 2 organizations that support families who have lost loved ones to gun violence. They started because they themselves were victims of gun violence. So this is Tween Swag, and the person who runs Tween Swag, she was shot at, her husband was killed. 10 years later, her brother was killed. So Tween Swag and Junior's Trauma Care Initiative, run by 2 people, a couple whose son was lost to gun violence. And now they have turned their grief into action. We support both those groups in their work, and they are also coalition members. We work with young people, national level, Team Enough, and we have a Team Enough chapter in San Diego. This is youth from middle school through college that are working to prevent gun violence at schools and beyond, and also working with our legislative leaders. So we have monthly meetings, first Saturday of the month, unless there's a holiday that's interrupting that. We meet, just started meeting now in person. We meet at Flood Church in Mission Valley. Everybody is welcome to join us there. Next meeting will be on July the 8th. We're avoiding the 4th of July weekend because of people being out of town. So at our meetings, we bring in a guest speaker to talk about various aspects of gun violence, and then we talk about what we're doing. We have our team reports. On our mailing list right now, we have around 1,500 people that help with petitions, calls to action, call your legislator on various aspects of whatever the legislation may be. There's always something that's coming up. And we have about 100 active people who help out to organize events and to be present at events. We work in teams. So we have 4 teams, and I'm telling you this in case one of these teams sounds like, oh, that's exactly where I'd like to get involved. We have a communications team that works on media alerts, press releases, social media. We have an education team, which works with students and with school districts. And I want to talk just a little bit about one of their projects that they're working on right now. And that is, coming up in September, the law that will require school districts to send home information to parents about secure firearm storage is going to go into place. So what we want to do, and what the team is working on right now, is putting together a toolkit for school districts. So that toolkit will help school districts become more aware that this is the law, California law, and in San Diego, that law goes beyond just the basics from the California's requiring for secure storage. But we want it to become more user-friendly. So this toolkit is going to be designed to help school districts, teachers, students, parents know more and get more engaged and understand better their requirements for keeping their firearms securely locked. And the reason? How many kids every day get shot in this country? Anyone want to hazard a guess here? Yeah, we're looking at 9 to 11 every day. And most of those are because they have found a firearm that the parent has not secured with either in a safe or with a gun lock. One of the schools we've worked with most recently, we've worked with several this year, but one we worked with just recently is Morse High School. And they asked us to come in to help them with what they were calling their Week of Consciousness. And for this Week of Consciousness, the students chose to highlight gun violence prevention. So we went in and we helped them with various aspects of this. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of the stories. They had a speak out, and the kids were talking about their things that were close to their hearts and were affecting them. And I was particularly touched by 3 students. One who came up, he sat down on the stage, and along with his story, he said, yeah, when I was in 4th grade, I was contemplating suicide, in 4th grade. Another boy got up and he said, I was shot in a school shooting. Bullet went through my shoulder. I couldn't write. This is that shoulder. I couldn't write for a couple of years. This is what kids are going through. 2 girls got up and they were talking about the trauma of being in a lockdown drill. And this is where our children are. And this is why we do the work that we do. The next committee that I want to talk about is the one that I'm co-chair, and it's the outreach and events. And this is where we work with our coalition partners. And we also set up tables at various community events to provide information, safe storage, the gun violence restraining orders, which are California's red flag laws. And a lot of people still don't know about that. So we provide this information to event goers. And we also provide information on domestic violence, because in San Diego, as many of you perhaps know, we do have the Your Safe Place, which works with domestic violence victims and also victims of trafficking. So again, we want to get this information out to the public so that they can have those resources in case they need them. One last thing that I want to highlight from that team is the Walk and Knocks. And we do this in collaboration with San Diego Police Force and also other community organizations. And we do literally go door to door, walking and knocking. And we provide information, our resources to the community. The San Diego PD provides their list of phone numbers that people can call. So it's a community do-good kind of outreach. So the last team that we have is the legislation and advocacy team, and I'm going to pass it over to Therese to talk about that. But before I do that, I just want to point out that on your table there are flyers about our organization. There are also flyers about the Team Enough. So if any of you with children, grandchildren in the middle school to college level who you think might like to get involved, please take those flyers. And on the table over there, we've got our sign-up sheet. So if you'd like to get onto our email list and learn more about what we do, so the emails go out maybe twice. We try not to overload people, so maybe twice a month, information about our events and also calls to action. So if there's a particular piece of legislation that needs, please call assembly member, congress member, local people, local legislators. You will hear about those. So that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Therese.
Do you want to say something about the Ask flyer?
Oh, but thank you. Also, thank you. Also on your table, Ask Day. This is an outreach from Brady. Ask Day is on June 23rd, and this is a day that's dedicated to asking about firearms in the home. So the idea is when you drop off your children, grandchildren at somebody's home for a play date, to ask about the presence of firearms. You know, we ask, and it's an awkward conversation to have, but it's one that needs to be more normalized. You know, we do ask about, okay, are they going to be swimming? Are you going to have watching them while they're in the pool? Are they going to be on social media? Is there going to be any oversight of what they're getting into on their iPhones? That also needs to be part of this conversation. Do you have a firearm? Is it locked up? And if the answer is no, it's not locked up, you know, you might want to say, well, why don't your kids come to my house to play? So it's just an awareness thing, and that's Ask Day, specifically on June 23rd, but it's an ongoing conversation that we need to have anytime children go to play. And again, the reason 9 to 11 kids every day are getting shot with a gun that is not properly stored. Did I forget anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. I'll turn it over and again, sign up. And thank you so much.
Good evening. Okay. Am I the right distance away from the mic? People can hear me? Excellent. So my plan for tonight is to talk a little bit about different types of gun violence that we deal with here in the United States, to bring it all the way to the local level and talk about some things in La Mesa, and then broaden back out and talk a little bit about state law. And so happy to take questions as we go if something occurs to you, or we can wait until the end. I can go either way, and I want to make sure I'm talking about things that you're interested in. So let's start with the very high level, America's gun problem. Do people know what the #1 cause of death is for children and teens at this point?
School shootings.
It's gun violence. It's being shot and killed. So this happened a couple of years ago, that gun violence and gun deaths overtook car accidents as the first cause of death for our children. So what gets the public's attention is mass shootings. So I heard somebody say, you know, is it getting shot at school? And it's not. But mass shootings get people's attention. And so from that awful situation of the number of mass shootings that we have at this point in our country, we can learn to drive change. And the Uvalde tragedy in Texas, just a little bit more than a year ago, is the tragedy at the elementary school that claimed the lives of 19 children and two teachers. And then what doesn't get talked about enough is that 17 other people were wounded in that shooting. And far too often, the people who are wounded but survive are not talked about and not thought about, and they live the rest of their lives often with the consequences of a shooting. So it created a new groundswell of focus across the country on assault weapons and on banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines being banned, and also on focus on the ability of 18 to 21-year-olds to buy these weapons. Now, we've been working on all of these things for decades, everybody who's involved in gun violence prevention, but it brought the focus back to that in a big way. But nothing's changed in Texas. The only things that changed in this legislative session was that things got worse in terms of loosening up their gun laws. And so what Texas really needs is a strong red flag law. As Carol mentioned, what we call our gun violence restraining orders. And I say that because of this. So red flag laws take guns after someone goes and establishes to a judge that there is cause to show that someone is a danger to themselves in terms of a risk of suicide, or they're a danger to someone else. And in those circumstances, on a temporary basis, the gun can be taken away and people can be prevented from buying a new gun for a period of time. The Uvalde shooter had all kinds of red flags in his background. He had social media statements saying that he was going to do something that would put him all over the news. He had made public suicide threats. He had violent social media postings. He had been driving around with a friend pointing BB guns outside of a car and pretending to shoot at people. He had killed a cat. All of those are red flags, and they could have been used to prevent that tragedy. So another example is the Parkland school shooting 5 years ago in Florida. I believe that shooting might have been when Max got involved in gun violence prevention. Is that right, Max? Yeah. So that, of course, is where 17 students and staff were killed in Florida in a school shooting. And out of it grew the powerful youth movement, March for Our Lives. And a red flag law was passed in Florida shortly after that shooting, and it is used a lot. It is in the midst of a state that is otherwise reversing itself on a lot of gun laws and making things less safe for its citizens. That red flag law is helping. So the other interesting thing that happened this year is after the Covenant school shooting in Tennessee this year, the Republican governor there is calling for a red flag law, unheard of in that state. They passed other gun laws that weakened their gun safety laws, but they're calling for a red flag law there, so we'll see what happens. So mass shootings are obviously devastating to everybody involved and to the community, and yet mass shootings are only 1% to 2% of gun deaths in our country. They're a very small percentage. So what else is happening in our country that is causing all of the gun deaths? Any ideas? What else? What other types of gun deaths are there? Suicides. Suicides are the largest percentage of gun deaths. So across the country, I think the statistic is about 60% of gun deaths. It is much higher than that in San Diego County. Does anybody know why? Military is probably one of the key reasons. The military and vet presence. Unfortunately, that population has a much higher rate of suicide, and they tend to use guns as their means. And gun suicide is highly lethal. More than 90% of people die if they use a gun. So what else do you think?
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence, exactly. So who remembers in San Diego County about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, the situation where a mother of 4 children had gone and she had gotten a restraining order, but it wasn't served by law enforcement. The father's guns did not get taken away, and do people remember what happened that night? He killed all of them. He killed those 4 children, his wife, and then himself. And so domestic violence, very serious, very dangerous situation when a gun is present in a domestic violence situation. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of a homicide by 500%. And so there's also another link between domestic violence and mass shootings that needs a lot more attention. And their link happens in a couple of different ways. So one is that 60% of mass shootings were directly linked to domestic violence between the years of 2014 and 2019. What we don't hear a lot about when we hear about mass shootings, and they're happening all the time in this country, are a mass shooting like I just described happened here in San Diego County, where it's immediate family that is multiple deaths are happening. There's another link too, which is that people who go on to do mass shootings of strangers have a very high percentage of them have a history of domestic violence in their background. And so domestic violence, a very serious situation. Other types of gun violence. I'm sorry? Accidental shootings, yes, as Carol was talking about. So we think of them with children. We have had unfortunate examples here in San Diego County. There was one death in Chula Vista a couple of years ago where a friend brought the gun to the sleepover. And so even though at the boy's house they didn't have guns, the friend brought the gun to the sleepover, and the one little boy whose house they were at ended up dead. And that happens daily across the country. So other types of shootings that result in death.
Employer and anger?
Yes, and that can often turn into employer type shootings, can often turn into mass shootings, right? Yeah, okay. There's another big category we haven't talked about yet. Right, so homicides, just generally. Our parlance for that is often community violence. And so it's the daily gun violence that impacts some of our neighborhoods much more than others. And in San Diego, that community violence is getting addressed in a couple of ways. The mayor's office initially funded a program in San Diego a couple of years ago called No Shots Fired. And that is a program that places people who have a background of being in gangs in their youth, who have turned their life around. They act as mentors to help to prevent and interrupt violence. They do a number of programs. So that program then has been successful. Congresswoman Jacobs has just seen that an additional $1 million worth of funding goes toward that program. And then this last year, the city of San Diego got a state grant to address community violence in the southeast part of San Diego as well. And that brought in $3.65 million over a 3-year period to the city. And so that's helping to do targeted work, mental health assistance. One of the community organizations that is getting funding through that is a group called Mothers with a Message, and they help the families of those who are shot and killed and help guide them through the incredible grief that happens when they've lost a child. So there's lots of good work going on in the community violence area. Okay, so with all these types of violence, we need to look at both root causes and solutions. And the solutions that people tend to think of immediately involve the gun, right? The types of different laws that we advocate for and people across the country advocate for. But there are a lot of things that we can do to address gun violence that have nothing to do with the gun at all, directly. And so if you think about root causes, often, especially in things like community violence, The root cause lies in social ills like poverty and not enough jobs in under-resourced communities, the lack of after-school programs to keep kids off the streets, a lack of skills to resolve problems in ways that don't involve violence. And you can see that the solutions for each of the types of gun violence that we talked about are going to be different because they all have very different root causes. And yes, though, the gun lies at the heart of everything because without the gun, the shooting doesn't happen. And so you know the saying, you hear the saying that came from the NRA. What is it? Well, yes, that's one of them. So one of them is you need a bad, if you,
The only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
that's one. And I see a hand.
Guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you need the gun too, right?
Yeah.
So it's both. And so these sayings, we have to learn how to just say no to them.
I have a question.
Yes.
There was a rumor a year or so ago that the NRA was going bankrupt, and I know we all cried bitter tears about that.
Yeah.
What's the status of that now?
Well, they didn't go bankrupt, but they have been largely weakened. But they're still a powerful organization. And the reality is that other organizations stepped in. There's a group called NSSF, National Shooting Sports Foundation. Yes, I've got some people nodding their heads. They have stepped in largely into what the NRA used to do more on their own. The NRA is still active. Here in San Diego, we have what we tend to call our mini NRA, San Diego County Gun Owners Organization. So there are lots of groups out there that are fighting the NRA's view on this. So let's talk a little bit about a gun-focused solution that is very effective. And I think Carol already mentioned it a little bit, and that is safe storage of guns. And she was talking about it in terms of the work that is being done to notify parents of children through their schools about safe storage. So California law on this has holes. And so the simplest way for me to explain it is that California basically has two sets of laws. One covers only households where you expect children to be. The other governs households where you have people who are called prohibited persons under law. So for example, somebody with a felony record is not allowed to have a gun. And in those households, then there are laws in California that say that guns have to be stored safely. However, it doesn't lay a really clear line on what that means, on what is safe storage. It leaves it a lot to the discretion of the gun owner. And that results in situations like what happened in Scripps more than a decade ago now, where a gun owner in Scripps felt that he had stored his gun safely. It was in a shoebox on top of his water heater out in the garage. And his teen son and some friends found the gun up there, not locked, and one of the kids ended up dead. And so what we have done locally with our coalition and others, other gun violence prevention groups, is since 2019, the city of San Diego, the city of Encinitas, and of Solana Beach and of Del Mar, and then just last year, the county of San Diego all put in place safe storage laws that are complete. So those safe storage laws say that every gun owner, if the gun is not on their person or in their immediate control, like right here, then it needs to be locked. And no exceptions. And so we've got these pockets of cities and then the unincorporated areas of the county where we've got stronger safe storage laws in place. Max and his organization at the time led an effort to get La Mesa to pass a safe storage law, and that was not successful. The vote was 3-2 on the La Mesa City Council. They said they were going to instead, and it would be adequate, was the word I remember one of the council members using, to do a public education campaign. So let's do a little show of hands. Who remembers sometime in the past year seeing something from your local government about the need to store guns safely, at least if you have children in your home? Anybody? Anything from your police department? Raise your hand. No? Okay. How about from either your children's school or from your grandchildren's school? Who's seen some information on safe storage? Okay, good.
I'm not in La Mesa.
You're not in La Mesa. Okay. Okay, so La Mesa's school district has actually made efforts on education. Brianna, do you want to say something quickly about that, what you've done?
Well, a lot of it had actually already been done by the time I was on the board, but there's links on the school's website to different safe storage resources and other organizations in the area that are doing great work on this. And then also, like was mentioned, there is a state requirement moving forward for schools to send part of their annual notifications of lots of different things to send out a safe storage notification. And we actually started doing that last year. This school year was the first year that we did that at the beginning of the school year. And that notification we also have posted on our district's website.
Yeah.
So
So I think there's an opportunity here in this part of the county to advocate with your local politicians to at least get the education done that they said they were going to do in La Mesa, and to advocate for safe storage laws, complete ones. So why is it important? Obviously it stops unintentional shootings like we've talked about tonight, but it also is a big help in preventing teen suicide if the teens don't have access to the gun. And you know where else teens use guns that they find unlocked in their household? They use them in school shootings. Earlier studies show as many as 75% of shootings, that's how the teens get access to the guns, is from their own home. There are also studies that show that it helps with adult suicide, that momentary thing of having to unlock a gun can interrupt the thought process between suicidal ideation and action. And so the other thing that's so important is that it helps prevent theft of guns, because guns that are stolen go on to become crime guns. They go on to the crimes that you mentioned and the homicides that happen on the street. So that's one thing you can do, is work on that if that appeals to you. And we are here to help support that. And so think about whether or not that's something you want to take on, and we would love to work with you. Question?
Question, yeah. When did you go to the Mesa City Council and try to get the law? Was it recently, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
It was 2022, right, Max?
Yeah.
Yeah, April of 2022.
Yeah, just a year ago.
Okay, the Mesa City Council, I believe, is all Democrats, so you might want to.
No.
Not at all.
No, Laura Lothian is still,
3 to 2 Democrats, I beg your pardon.
yeah.
Now,
So you might have better luck.
We might, and so I think that it's worth it for you guys to talk about whether you think that that's worthwhile. Give us some direction.
we have a council member.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Who's here?
Yes. I have not, heard,
no, it hasn't come forward since you've been on.
Yeah,
but I'm making notes.
Excellent.
Because, I have worked with the La Mesa Police Department, and, I think that probably a good way to start would be to, make a proclamation and then have that go out to the community and include the local schools, the police department, firefighters, and any other concerned citizens in regards to safe
That'd be great.
And just start there.
Yeah, okay, terrific. You never know who's gonna be in the audience. Huh? Okay, so the other thing you can do is what Carol already talked about, that is talked to the people who you are dropping your children or your grandchildren off about their safe storage of guns. The way personally that I found it made it easier to ask the question was to say, if you have a gun in your household, is it stored locked? So people find their own way that they're comfortable asking the question in order to protect the children. So let's shift focus now from local efforts to state efforts, and I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about what's going on. I brought only like 10 copies, I apologize, of a piece of paper. There's at least one on each table, and it looks like this. It's a two-sided document. It's got some red and blue on it, and so if you're interested, maybe you can take a picture of it. This is a list of all the laws we've been following for this legislative term in 2023 in the California legislature that deal with gun violence prevention. And I guarantee we've missed one or two because there are always so many strong laws being talked about in our legislature. So this list, the front page and a little bit onto the back, are the 24 bills out of the 41 that have passed from their original chamber, either the Assembly or the Senate, and have now moved to the other chamber. So those are the laws that are still active. And then on the back are the laws that didn't make it either out of the policy committee or out of the appropriations funding committee. And so for this year, those laws are now not being considered any further. There's a lot of laws there. I'm not going to talk about all of these. I am going to mention two, and I'm happy to talk with you about anything else if something catches your eye. But the two I want to mention, first one is SB 2, Senate Bill 2, and that's an important law. You'll remember last year there was the really, really unfortunate and problematic Supreme Court decision that overruled a decades-old New York state law about concealed carry weapon permitting and how it occurs. And what it makes the decision so problematic is that it totally changed the standard under which every single gun law is reviewed across the country. And here's the simple explanation of the standard. The standard now is, can you point to an analogous law from the 1700s when we were founded? And if you can't, or if the judge doesn't think that that law that you point to is close enough, then that can't be a law now. Now, tell me that makes sense, right? That doesn't make sense. Think of all the technological changes and the difference between one bullet at a time, pack the bullet into the rifle that existed in the 1700s, and our assault weapons now, let alone our other guns. So that's the standard that we're trying to deal with now, and it's very hard. And one thing that California had to do is it had exactly the same kind of concealed carry weapon permit system in place that New York did. And so this bill, Senate Bill 2, changes that system to comply with what that court case held in terms of setting more objective standards for when the licenses will be granted. It also sets up stronger training requirements for people who get concealed carry weapon permits. And finally, it sets up a number of safe spaces where even if you have a concealed carry weapon license, you cannot take a gun into those spaces. Schools, government buildings, where we go to vote, bars, there's a whole list, and it's an important bill. And so that bill is moving, and it will pass. They tried to pass one on an emergency basis last year, and it failed by one vote. But that bill could use supportive calls to your state legislators. It is in the Assembly right now for consideration. And the second and last bill I want to mention is that it's Assembly Bill 28. And what it does is it puts an excise tax on the sale of all firearms and ammunition. And that money then will be used to pay for gun violence prevention programs. So tax the people who are buying the guns that are causing the violence to pay for programs to help fight against that. So that's everything I have. Is there time for any questions or no?
One or two.
Okay.
Are the school districts doing anything with gun killing awareness at, say, the middle school level or is even lower?
Some schools are, yes. So for example, one of our coalition members is a local group that is now working outside of San Diego as well. It's called TKF, the Tariq Kamiza Foundation. They do all kinds of school-based programs, including just hour-long assembly programs to talk about gun violence, to placing mentors into schools for an entire school year and having a whole program about alternative dispute resolution, they focus on middle school children in particular, teaching kids about other ways to resolve conflicts besides violence. So maybe one more question? Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Is there, are they using weapons in the community colleges, Rosemont and Cuyamaca, as far as their campus police? Are they carrying weapons?
Good question. I do not know. Does anybody know? I don't know. Yeah.
That was a big issue a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for your attention. I know now you have a great next act.
Thank you very much to both of them, and one more round of applause. Yeah, I have gun violence in my family. It's a tragedy that affects all of us. We need to talk a little bit about next month's meeting. It's going to be at the park. Remember, it's our yearly party in the park. There should be a flyer on each page, each table. Thank you, Miriam, spokesmodel. So please take a picture of it. We will have speakers, music. Okay, here's the thing. We used to have a pie contest, not eating, but tasting contest. No, that would get gross. And the person that does all of our special events, Meryl Perry, is wonderful, but she's like, I'm not doing the pie thing. So is anybody interested in organizing a pie contest of just getting 3 judges, encouraging people to bring pies, and, oh, I need my notebook. Yes. Thank you. Teamwork, teamwork. And we will have for sale a sandwich, chips, and a water for $10. We had people that said that was too little, but that's what we're going with. And if you would like to make your sandwich order, write this down on your agenda. R as in Richie, KG, MPP at att.net. They will have the choice of turkey, Italian meats, or veggie. So make your sandwich order now, if you can. He will obviously buy extras because somebody forgets, but it would be great if you could do that before next month's meeting. Also, remember at the park, it's a stone little thing, so you're gonna want to bring like a folding chair or something because it's really not comfortable. You're more than welcome to bring your own food if you'd rather do that than eat our sandwiches. And please bring a dessert. If you have any questions, see me or find the flyer on your, take a picture of it. Yes?
Do we bring the money there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just the RSVP?
Yes.
It's not sending you the money?
No, it's just RSVP. And also if who makes really good 3-bean salad or whatever, if you want to make something really cool, watermelon, right? Bring something, please. And please let us know what you're bringing. I did a potluck last year and I thought, okay, pasta salad, that's pretty generic. There were 10 pasta salads. So, and mine wasn't the best. So this is something we definitely want to RSVP so we know what we're getting.
And any other questions about this? It's a great meeting. We're very happy that we're able to do it this year. Yes.
You're gonna send that out in an email, aren't you?
Yeah. Max? Where'd Max go? Okay, yes, we're going to send that out in an email. And Richie will be collecting the RSVPs. I already put in mine. All right, we've got the rest of the program. We've got both of our political candidates here, and I'm going to have Janet again to introduce them. Thank you. Yes. We were going to sell them in the raffle.
All right, thank you, Tina. And as many of you know, we are having a special election for the 4th District for the supervisor seat coming up. And we've invited the 2 Democratic candidates who are running to come today and answer a few questions so we can get to know them better. And I would like to invite Janessa Goldbeck, CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, to come on up, and Monica Montgomery Stepp, San Diego City Council President Pro Tem. Please come up and have a seat up here, and we'll make sure everybody can see you. We might have to bring this up a little bit. And then this mic. All right, thank you. So welcome, candidates. For our special election. Now, this special election is going to be held on August 15th, so it's important that people have a really good understanding of where each candidate stands in the critical issues that face the constituents of East County District 4, East San Diego County District 4, or San Diego County District 4, I should say. It's not just East County. We have invited the 2 candidates, and so that you can make a decision for yourself regarding the August 15th special election. So we're going to allow a maximum of 3 minutes for opening comments, 2 to 3 minutes to answer each question, and then 3 minutes for closing comments. So I have Trinity sitting. Trinity, show us your signs. She's sitting right here. She'll hold it up when you have 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then stop. And I'm going to be real firm because we want to get in questions. So I'm going to be firm about time's up. Okay? So don't mind if I'm rude. I will be. So opening statement for 3 minutes. We're going to start with Ms. Goldbeck, and as you introduce yourself, be sure to include your educational background and your work experiences that make you a viable candidate for the Board of Supervisors. That is your mic.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being out here on a weekday evening. It really means a lot. For those of you I don't know, my name is Janessa Goldbeck. I'm a lifelong San Diegan, born and raised in North County. My mom was a public school teacher. My dad drove a tow truck. I was really fortunate to get to go to undergraduate at Northwestern University, where I studied journalism and African studies, and spent some of that time studying abroad in Uganda and Rwanda. It was there that I learned that there was an ongoing genocide in the Darfur region of Sudan, just a few thousand miles away, and as a 19-year-old passionate about making change, I came back to the United States fired up to do something about it. Began organizing on my campus, and became a national organizing director for the student movement to end the genocide in Darfur. I moved to Washington, D.C. for the first part of my career to become a professional human rights advocate, working with the presidential administration, both the Bush administration and the Obama administration, as well as Congress, to pass legislation and enforce policies that protect civilians in conflict zones. And that's where I learned to build diverse coalitions to get things done that really make a difference in people's lives. I joined the Marine Corps at the age of 26 as a young, openly gay woman, a progressive woman. Some people might scratch their heads and say, well, how did you get from human rights to the military? The reason is we work directly with the armed forces in some of these conflict zones around the country. There were military forces on the ground. We needed to work in concert with them, and it was important that we had people who understood both forces. So joined the Marine Corps, spent 7 years as a combat engineer officer, also spent time as a victims advocate, working with service members who had experienced sexual assault. And I probably would have stayed in a little bit longer, but 2 things happened. 1, Trump was elected, and 2, my mom got really sick. She had multiple sclerosis. It evolved evolved into a dementia diagnosis, and as an only child, I knew I had to come home and take care of her. So that found me back here in San Diego County. Since then, I've been running a national veterans advocacy organization that works to lift up the voices of over 1.5 million vets and military families around the country to pass legislation that makes real change in their lives, including passing the largest expansion in veterans healthcare benefits in 30 years, expanding healthcare to 5 million new veterans. I want to bring the experience I've had working to pass legislation at the federal and state government back home to my hometown of San Diego to take action, real action, not just words, on some of the biggest crises facing our region, including the homelessness crisis, including the epidemic of mental health and addiction, including the skyrocketing cost of living here in San Diego County, and public safety. I also, you mentioned educational background. I have a master's from the University of San Francisco in public leadership. I'm very excited to bring my diverse set of experiences to my hometown, home region, so that we can actually see San Diego County, the San Diego County we know and love, not just as a place where we all live, and not just a place we can all afford to live, but a place that we actually all love to live. So I'm excited to be here tonight. Thank you so much for making time for us, and I'm excited to get into the conversation.
I will just first start by echoing the thanks for being a part of this amazing ride that we are on. I think this is both our fourth meeting of the evening, so we're certainly adjusting. But thank you so much for being here, being engaged in this really, really important election. My name is Monica Montgomery Stepp. I currently serve as Council President Pro Tem at the City of San Diego. I was born and raised in the supervisorial district here in the county of San Diego. I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, a historically Black university, college and university. While there, at the age of 20, I became very, very ill with an autoimmune illness. I had to come back home. My mother had to take care of me. She had to apply for in-home supportive services to take care of me. And we had to go to the county in order to keep our family in a place where we could survive with me being sick. And so this really is full circle for me to have an opportunity to be in a seat where I am making decisions about the very services that I had to engage in, the very things that I had to stay on the phone for 2 and 3 hours on hold in order to receive services, or stand in line in order to receive services. So it's extremely, extremely personal. While I was recovering, I decided to go to law school. So that also was not easy, but I had a lot of family support in doing that. Went to California Western School of Law and went through even as I was recovering from the illness. And so I worked and interned at the Public Defender's Office during that time. And I also interned at the City of San Diego under then Council President Tony Young. And so really gained a lot of experience at the city then. And then once I left, I went to work for a small firm. We did some civil rights cases, especially around employment discrimination. But I also went into law school during the time, or came out of law school during the time where a lot of folks were losing their homes. So I spent some time filing injunctions against big banks in order for people to be able to keep their homes during that time. From there, I went on to work at City Hall for 3 elected officials. I left City Hall because my boss at the time made some comments that I could not stand by. Those comments were around racial profiling. So I left and ran a local campaign for bail reform at the ACLU. And then I ran for office, and now I'm here. So it has been a very a long journey, but a wonderful journey where I really have been in the trenches serving community members, and I want to take that leadership certainly to a broader scale, and I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so our question is, having spent the last 3 years battling COVID-19, the county has begun refocusing on efforts to transform the county's approach to behavioral health, mental health, homelessness, drug treatment programs, among many other things. So what do you consider to be the top 2 issues facing the Board of Supervisors, and what plans, ideas, and/or solutions can you offer to address these issues? We'll start with Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you. And the timing is?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
2 to 3 minutes, yeah.
Yes, so great question, and for context, we have to, and I know you all understand, but just 5 or 6 years ago, when the county was not a majority Democratic County Board of Supervisors, the supervisors at that time made a conscious decision to not deal with homelessness because they really felt that they couldn't solve it and didn't want to be involved. And if you, as I talked to county staff members that have been there for a long time, that was the consensus. So now we have to understand that the situation that we are in now is because of that lack of investment and attention for decades of time. So we're trying to make up for that. And then throw on top of that a once in a century event of the pandemic that really changed circumstances for a lot of people and then exacerbated the issues that we do have as a region. There are some major challenges at the County of San Diego right now. We do have leadership that is moving forward to address the issues of our most vulnerable populations. I have dedicated my career to that. And so doing that on a broader scale would be something that I would be very experienced and also knowledgeable, and the reason why I'm excited about running this race. But I think the top 2 issues, as you mentioned, of course, are housing and homelessness. I think that a close third will be the human rights violations that we are seeing within our jails. We have a high number of jail deaths, and so in the treatment, inhumane treatment, we certainly have to address that. I think that these are holistic. I think that a lot of people, my last count, that was back in 2018, we did our own data drop. About 57% of the people at that time that were sleeping on the streets had also been involved in the criminal legal system. So there's certainly a connection there, and we have to look at these things not in silos. So I have a lot of plans that I can't go through in 3 minutes, but what I do know is that the city of San Diego, the city of La Mesa, the county of San Diego really have to work together, but the county does have an $8.1 billion budget in order to address these issues. And they certainly need to continue to move in the direction of helping our most vulnerable populations. We do need to engage in getting as much money as we can from our partners at the state and federal levels. I will just say that we cannot put that money on systems and foundations that are not strong. We need elected officials that will go deep into the system in order to fix those things, to avoid people falling through the cracks like they're falling through the cracks now. We have our regional task force on homelessness. We have an entire data system that your taxpayer dollars are paying for that is not working for our service providers. We have to fix that.
I think we can all agree that what's happening right now isn't working. We've heard talk on homelessness and housing for years now, and the problems are just getting worse. Some of that are things that are big picture issues like inflation and just the skyrocketing cost of living across the country in general. But we need to take a serious look at what the county can unleash, because as the council member said, for many years the county did sit on its hands, but we've had a Democratic majority for a few years now, and there is a lot more potential for the county to get much more involved. I currently sit on the county's Behavioral Health Advisory Board. This is a supervisory board that oversees the county's Health and Human Services Department as well as behavioral health. We hear regularly from Dr. Luke Bergman, who's the head of Behavioral Health Services. And when it comes to behavioral health services in particular, so mental health counseling, addiction counseling, treatment for folks who have acute psychiatric disorders, the county is facing a shortage of over 10,000 behavioral health workers over the next 10 years. So we have to get serious about hiring and recruiting and retaining folks to the county who are going to be on the front lines of addressing this crisis. You asked for our top 2 issues, so I'll say mine are similarly housing and homelessness. They are connected, but they are not the same. there are a couple of ways the county can be extraordinarily aggressive, I think more aggressive, at dealing with our homelessness crisis. And I'm going to walk through a couple of those. One, emergency housing. So right now, if you are in need of overnight shelter, there are not enough shelters to meet your needs. And if you have specific needs, like you need assistance going to the restroom or showering, or you can't climb onto the top bunk of a two-story rack, there's no overnight shelter in San Diego County that will take you if you can't meet your activities of daily life. None. So where do you go? The choices are the ER or even potentially jail. That's not right. So we need to expand our emergency housing options. The county has land. Other counties around the state of California have put temporary prefabricated shelters in place. These are small shelters, 100 square feet, that have electricity, shower, whatever, but they also have supportive wraparound services around them. So the county can be a partner to the cities within the county and to the unincorporated areas by creating more emergency overnight shelter. We also can be a partner to the entire region by ensuring that we are investing in long-term care facilities. During the pandemic, we lost a ton of these facilities. These are residential facilities that take 6 or 7 individuals maximum, but folks who need help taking their meds, might be disabled. These are great options. The governor has a plan to fund more of these, to incentivize opening them, but the county needs to be right-sized to go after that funding and make sure we have the staff to implement it. And finally, I will just say that, for many years, the county has said, we have a lot of problems, we need to get more done. And now that we have Democrats on board, that's going to solve the problem. Obviously, that's not the case. We need Democrats who are willing to think big, who are willing to take big leaps, who are going to be gutsy with the policies they put together, and not accept just little bites at the apple, but real systemic change. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is Janessa will start this next question off. Residents in East County have expressed ongoing concerns about a couple of key issues that are unique to our area. And we'd like to hear where you stand in regards to these two issues. The first one is the interchange of two freeways, the 125 and the 94. We are concerned about what's going to happen there. The second one is the Cottonwood Sand Mine Project in Rancho San Diego, in the Hamishaw Valley, Sweetwater River area. So if you could address where do you stand on both of those, that would be helpful.
Sure. Well, I would love to have a longer conversation about the freeway interchange. I know that is an issue of a lot of concern. I will say that what the County Board of Supervisors, how we can be an engaged partner to folks in East County around that issue. That I think there's a lot of conversation to be had. I'll just be upfront with you. This is not an issue that I know like the back of my hand, so I'd love to have longer conversation with folks, hear your concerns, and hear what you'd like to see from the County Board of Supervisors. On the sand mine, I've absolutely heard quite a bit about this. One, I think there are a lot of different options when it comes to how we lower construction costs in San Diego County. I hear from the folks who want to put the mine in that the sand is imperative so that we can lower construction costs. We know that there are alternatives to sand when it comes to construction, to lowering costs in construction. We know that mining is in our backyards. It has a lot of detrimental impacts, not just environment, but quality of life. And so these are two issues that I understand that if a sand mine was going in my backyard, I would be incredibly upset. And I think that the county, the supervisors have a role to play. Obviously, the permitting and going forward of that project will come down to the board, but they have a lot of role to play in pushing back against projects that interrupt communities, that are bad for the environment, that are not necessary in our region. And I would like to be an advocate and a partner to you in making sure that you don't see this type of project in your backyard.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll start with Cottonwood first, and I did make a statement at the East County Democratic Club that I do stand with the community and will do whatever it takes, even if it's just being a voice with the power that comes with being a county board of supervisor. In your desire to stop all of the activity around that type of mining in your backyard. I do know that those things come with a cost. I also know that we're in 2023 and there are many innovative ways that folks even across the nation are thinking about how to supply these type of building materials for building. We know that we have to build, but we also know that we're facing a climate crisis. There are many environmental concerns, and I do believe the community's voice should be centered in this area. And the thing about costs around building, this is also an issue that has to be addressed with the state requirements that are being put on us, in addition to the county and then the chartered and/or incorporated cities. It's really just not about building material, and it's not just about labor. There are many different costs that are involved in building. In California, it's a catastrophe. And so working at every level to be able to decrease those costs is something that is extremely important to me, but it shouldn't come on the backs of folks that are dealing with these types of mining activities in their backyard. And so that's certainly, I want to reiterate what I said at the club level. The 125 and the 94, I do remember beginning this discussion in the Sandag Transportation Committee. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know that there are some improvements that are being suggested in the regional transportation plan at Sandag, and so I too would certainly want to be more engaged, as with the mining issue, or with the thoughts of the community members around this issue. I just know that there is a balance to be stricken with a lot of the transportation issues and the transportation decisions that we have to make as a region around the 5 big moves, and also the desires of our residents who will be most impacted. So for me, that is the way that I have governed. We've built out a community governance model in the District 4 City Council office, which engages community on a regular basis in order to influence the policies that we put through the system. And so this would be no different. Engaging community is extremely important to me. We don't know everything all the time. I do know the surface of the issues because I've served on Sandag Transportation Committee, but this is something that we would have to engage the community in.
Great, thank you. Okay, Monica, you will start this question. The effects of climate change are being felt every day in the form of fires, flood, heat, property damage, loss of business, and even loss of life. Communities of color and low-income communities have been disproportionately impacted by environmental injustices. The effort by the County Board of Supervisors to outline a regional approach to guide us to a zero-carbon future was started over 2 years ago. This regional decarbonization framework is a detailed science-based guide for cities, businesses, and residents. But a plan is just paper until it is acted upon. Can you please tell us how you would support the implementation of this decarbonization framework?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So I do know that the decarbonization framework is in litigation right now. And the lawsuit has to do with a community group that has said that this framework was built out and the county consulted a company that is heavily engaged in the area of utilities, and has a strong relationship with utility companies. And so the framework right now, it is being challenged. However, depending upon the result of that litigation, I think it's important for us to continue on with a framework that does revolve around as many renewable energy sources as we possibly can, including further incentivizing rooftop solar. I do think that transportation is extremely important in this area, giving people as many options as possible, but also including our infrastructure with regard to electrical car chargers too, because we know that there are many different situations for many different types of folks in walks of life. And so depending on that lawsuit and where the litigation ends up, I think that is extremely important. But also engaging different members of the community in the various solutions that we have to adhere to. The state has mandates, we do have to meet them. But I've also been a proponent of engaging in what public power does look like. I did cast a no vote against our franchise agreement that we do have with San Diego Gas and Electric. I did do that based on the terms of that agreement, and I stand by that vote, but it also does show that I will, in these spaces, stand up for climate justice, and that it will continue to build out that framework that is the least restrictive, and that produces what the state has mandated for us to do by 2035.
Thank you.
Well, we know that the climate crisis is not just an existential threat. Here in San Diego County, it is literally in our backyards or at our front doorsteps, whether we're talking about wildfire or increasing extreme heat or the rising sea levels. So making sure that we have a regional decarbonization framework that is not just a plan, but is an action plan with measurable, specific, and time-based goals is incredibly important. A couple of things, working on conservation and climate justice is something that's been woven through my entire career. I'm very fortunate to lead an organization that was able to work directly with the Biden administration over the last several years to permanently protect over 550,000 acres of wild space in Colorado, Nevada, and Texas. A lot of that land is near communities that don't often have access to outdoor space, especially in El Paso. And I'm very proud to say that through the Antiquities Act, that land is now permanently protected, getting us one step closer to the administration's goal of protecting 30% of our nation's lands and waterways by the year 2030. In order to get that done, we worked directly with the community. Those are community-driven programs that we were then able to resource with expertise and relationships in order to get those things done. So I'm no stranger to building coalitions to get things done at scale. At the county level, there is a lot in that framework that will require constant supervision, I think. It's one thing to give something to staff and say, okay, it's yours now. It's another thing to check in and make it a priority. Climate and conservation has been a priority for me my entire career. I will continue to make it a priority at the County Board of Supervisors, checking in on the metrics that we've set, making sure that there is an accountability mechanism and that we're being held accountable by the community, by key stakeholders to getting the job done. The last piece I'll say is there is a historic amount of funding coming from both the state and the federal government through the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act for climate infrastructure, for electrification, for transition to off of fossil fuels to clean energy, to ensure that we have EVs on the roads and that we're investing in public transit. And if we're not prepared at the county level to go after every single one of those dollars, and that means not just submitting grants and receiving the money, but have the staff who have the expertise to put that money to work, we're going to be in trouble, we're going to miss the boat, and we're going to be left behind. So I think it's really important that we understand that it's imperative we have leaders who understand how to go after those resources, how to put them to work, and make sure that our county is not just doing what we say we're going to do, but leading the state when it comes to our transition to a clean energy economy.
Janessa, you'll start this next question. Tell us about your relationship with labor unions, as well as the ways in which you have supported their work. Also include any plans you might have to work with labor unions in the future.
Well, my mother was a public school teacher. I remember when my mom joined the union, which we started out, she was a Montessori school teacher working in a private school. Our family was really struggling. Her wages were really low. We didn't have health insurance or dental insurance. So she went back to school. When I was in high school, she went to Cal State San Marcos, got her teaching credential, and joined the union. And I distinctly remember the first time that I got to go to the dentist, and what a big difference her union paycheck made in our lives. So I'm a firm believer that in our society, labor unions are the backstop against rampant corporate capitalism. I believe in business, I believe in small business, but I also know the power of collective organizing and how much it can do for communities and for non-union workers as well. So that's been a driving factor throughout my career. I mentioned earlier the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Our organization worked on those bills over the last few years and really worked alongside our labor partners to ensure that there were Davis-Bacon labor protections in all of those, so that when we are spending money to update our infrastructure to make it more climate friendly, that we actually have a prevailing wage on those jobs and that we have good labor standards. Here in San Diego, I've been a big supporter of our labor partners, including taking an out-front stance on Measure D, which was an an effort to lift the ban on project labor agreements in the city of San Diego. This ban had existed for many years and was preventing the city from implementing PLAs on some of its projects. There was an effort to make the case to Republican and NPP voters that this PLAs are good for veterans and military families. So the building trades reached out. They asked me to be the KUSI whisperer and to go and spend many mornings on KUSI making the case why project labor agreements are good for military veterans. And as you can imagine, going on KUSI multiple times at 8 in the morning is an interesting experience, but I'm really proud to say that that measure passed, and now we've lifted the ban on PLAs. I will continue to be in the fight, not just when it's convenient, but when it's necessary. I've been out on the line with the Teamsters, and two different locals are striking right now for better wages and benefits. I mean, we're talking about things like just having accessible bathrooms. These are not exorbitant requests, just having the opportunity to take a break after you've worked 4 hours instead of at the beginning of your shift, which is what some of these subcontractors are requiring. If you go out and walk the line and you talk to members, these are people who are invested members of our community. They are transporting some of the most vulnerable in our communities. They deserve a living wage. They deserve to have good health care and benefits. This is not just talking points to me, it's personal, it's my life, and I will be an active advocate for our labor partners at the county and hope to be the best partner that our county employees have ever had at the County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So back in 2018, when I ran for the City Council District, I had nearly zero institutional support. SEIU Local 221 did support me, county workers, about 13,000 members. And also the healthcare workers union did support me, but none of the other unions did, right? And I mentioned that in this context because I kept my door open. Because no matter what the support was at that time, our value system was the same. And so we continue to engage in conversations. And since I've been at City Hall, I've led quite a few conversations. One is around getting rid restoring our pension program for our city workers. That was a huge deal. We just delivered the biggest raises that our city employees have seen in almost a decade at the city of San Diego, and those were not easy conversations, because oftentimes, I love all of our staff members, but oftentimes the executive level will tell you, you don't have the money. You cannot take care of the people that are serving our public. And we fought against that. And we delivered for our folks. And so I'm grateful to be in partnership with our city employees. I was on the dais to vote for Measure D going to the ballot. And I will just say that our value systems, our value sets are the same. However, oftentimes in building trades, it's an institution, right? So there are things that need to be corrected in the institution. So we have real conversations about how to make the workplace better for every single person that is there. And not only that, I think my endorsements reflect my relationship with labor. I have been endorsed again by SEIU Local 221. I've been endorsed by SEIU United Healthcare Workers, also the Laborers Local 89, the Carpenters Local 619, United Domestic Workers. These are all folks that I had to sit down if nothing was given to me. I had to talk about my record, and I had to talk about the things that I would continue to fight for and do at the county level. But the record shows that I'm not afraid to stand up in those rooms. I have had to negotiate with executive staff. I've had to negotiate with contractors. I've had to negotiate with nonprofit executives. I've had to do all of that when no one was looking. And when we opened those doors, we came out with positive results for the people. And I will do the same thing at the county level.
Do we have time for another question before closing comments? Okay. So we have seen the proliferation of anti-LGBTQIA legislation nationwide to eliminate efforts to secure the rights of members of our LGBTQIA community. These types of legislations and resolutions have increased in our district as well as across the nation. As a county board of supervisors representative, what actions will you take to address these efforts? And we'll start with Monica.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Such an important one because we see what is going on around the nation. We also see some of the actions of our local cities, and we think that it can never happen here, but it can, right? So I can say that I consider myself an ally to the LGBTQ community. We, in our office, have funded some of our LGBTQ organizations, including Pride, including the LGBTQ Black Coalition as well, and some of the work that they do in our communities. We've also honored the lives of Black trans folks in chambers, and so I know at that level, certainly that's the least that I can do, but also it's just so important to be an ally in this space and to not stand for hate no matter where it tries to rear its ugly head, especially with the LGBTQ community. I will continue to show that leadership as I've done prior to my ACLU days. We'll continue to show that leadership and certainly be an ally to the community as much as is needed. And right now, it really, really is needed.
Yeah, it's a scary time right now out there for a lot of communities, but for the LGBTQ community in particular, which the far right has really trained its sights on in recent months. The Human Rights Campaign earlier this week issued a state of emergency for LGBTQ people across the country because of the record number of bills and policies that have been introduced at the state and local level across the country targeting the community. I was very proud to stand with La Mesans and San Diegans from across the county in La Mesa a few weeks, days, time is funny these days, a few weeks ago when there was a council member who issued was attempting to place a ban on flying the pride flag at La Mesa City Hall. Dozens of concerned citizens showed up and spoke against it and called it out for what it was, a way of saying we're not going to say gay here in La Mesa. They called her out, we called her out, and she retracted her motion. And thank you, council member, for voting to actually make June the Pride Month in La Mesa. So La Mesa stood strong. You know, I joined the Marine Corps when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in place, and I was incredibly fortunate that in the first few weeks of my initial training it was repealed. I was able to serve openly as a lesbian, one of the first waves of officers who were able to do so, and it changed the whole course of my career and of my personal life. You know, I was able to bring my whole self to the table, and without that policy, without the years and years of advocacy and sacrifice for those who came before me, I know that my life wouldn't be possible, my Marine Corps career wouldn't be possible, my ability to be married to my amazing wife wouldn't be possible, and to live the life that I want to lead as a leader in our community, not just as an openly gay person, but as not just an ally, but a champion for our community. I'm proudly have served as the co-chair of the San Diego LGBT Center's board, on the mayor's LGBTQ advisory board. I also serve on the boards of Equality California and Victory Fund and have been endorsed by both of those organizations. These are organizations that are fighting at the state level and across the country to elect LGBTQ leaders and fight back against these discriminatory policies. Look, the county is where the rubber meets the road on these culture battles that are coming to our country, that the alt-right, the far right is whipping up this concern and anger. And it's so important that we have leaders that are not just going to be saying that they are in support, but are going to be out front every day leading on these, protecting our youth, particularly our trans youth, standing up for them and fighting for them. And I pledge to do that every day because it's who I am and how I've lived as a person.
So, lastly, I'd like you to share any closing comments you would like to make, including addressing any issues or concerns that haven't been covered by our questions tonight, and you each have 3 minutes. And we'll start with Janessa.
Sure. Well, I just want to say thank you again, and this is a very short election. I got into this race in February of this year before the Nathan Fletcher scandal broke, thinking that I had 2.5 years to have conversations like this. I thought I had a great plan, man. I was gonna just go to all these meetings, have conversations with individuals, hear directly from people. Obviously, we say in the Marine Corps, no plan survives first contact, and here we are, less than 40 days until ballots go out. So if you didn't get a chance to get your question answered tonight, I'll be hanging out after, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Here's what I'll say to you. I grew up here in San Diego County. I look around at the county that we live in now, and yes, there's been some great strides, there's been progress made, but this is a tough place to live now. It is a tough place to make rent, it's a tough place to afford to live, it's a tough place to get childcare for your kids. If you are on a fixed income, you're looking at the rising costs and thinking, how am I gonna afford to stay here? How are my kids gonna be able to move home? I've got friends who are moving to other parts of the county, they're moving out of state, they're moving to other parts of California because they can't make it work here. And that's not right. We're shortchanging the next generation. And I believe that we need to really take a look at what we have on the table. It's not just enough that we have elected leaders in office who have a D next to their name, but that they're actually going to make change that will impact a wide variety of people. This district is the most diverse district in the county. It includes a big chunk of veterans and military families, the densest military veterans in the state of California. It's the heart of the LGBTQ community. We've got the African American community, big portion of the Latino community, big portion of the AAPI community, and a lot of everything in between. And it's important that we elect a supervisor who is going to get out into the community, who brings a diverse set of experiences in a lot of different places and venues, who is going to put that diversity, that experience to work for San Diego County. I'll leave you with one last thing. In 2018, when the Board of Supervisors were all Republicans, Democrats said, we need to elect Democrats to the board so that we can tap into the county's resources and put it to work. There were $2.4 billion in reserve funds at the county at that time, and over $600 million of that was unrestricted funds. And the Board of Supervisors was just sitting on it. They said, we're not gonna do anything about homelessness, that's not our job, we're just gonna sit on it. Well, we've elected Democrats, and things have started to change. We've seen what happens when we have engaged leaders who are willing to do that. But the county still has a reserve fund of $2.4 billion and over $600 million in unrestricted funds. So when we say we don't have the resources to do that, I question that. That's a matter of political will. That's a matter of political guts. My career, my life, I believe I have demonstrated that I'm not afraid to stand up. I'm not afraid to put myself into situations that are tough, that are where I'm under fire. I want to build diverse coalitions to put that county to work, put that money to work, and give San Diegans the county they deserve. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you again for taking the time to listen to both of us. Currently, I represent 160,000 people that are part of this supervisorial district. Currently, I lead the council process over a $5.2 billion budget. One of my signature pieces of legislation was developing the Independent Commission on Police Practices. Community members had asked for the city to do that for 8 years. And we were able to stand up this commission with independent counsel and an independent community voice. I established the Office of Race and Equity, which changes the way that we view the budgetary process and invest in our most vulnerable populations and those communities that have been left behind for decades upon decades. I championed alternative methods to supplement our law enforcement and our police officers with alternative methods of violence interruption that includes our community-based organization. And since we have placed that into the budget, crime in our community, while in others it goes up, in ours it went down by 10%, and homicides went down by 55%. These are important solutions that we have brought to the table with major resistance. With major resistance. But we have been able to build consensus, not only when there were still Republicans serving on the city council, but even now. We were one out of 8 cities in the entire nation under my leadership with co-chairing the Reinvestment Task Force to be chosen to provide millions of dollars to first-time home buyers in our region. Because our cost of living is so high that is the type of aid, especially that our younger people need in order to even stay here. When we are confronted with a system that has been doing the same thing over and over and over and over, it takes mountains to churn that situation. This is a big ship. It's a big ship. And nothing is done in 2 and 3 years that has that type of impact. Some of the things that I've been able to do in the city, I won't see for another 10 years, but I'm okay with that. And I think in this race, it's important that we know when we get there that things will not happen overnight, but we have to stay persistent. That's what I will do for you, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
So, wow, thank you both so much for your willingness to run, and I'll tell you, residents of District 4 are so fortunate in that we have 2 amazing people to pick from, and it's unfortunate that we can only pick one, but that's the decision. So thank you both for sharing information with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we've still got a little bit of work to do. When is election day?
August 15th.
August 15th. When is election day?
August 15th.
Okay, are we gonna tell everybody we know and some we don't know that?
Ballots go out July 15th.
Yes, yes. I will try to get a Go team going in East County and see if we can get funds from the county to do that. Yes?
Are we going to be in the same situation that the Mesa City was in, with 2 Democrats running for 1 seat till the Republicans got it?
Right. I hope not.
We are.
Well, okay. Who's going to tell?
Don't they need more than 50% to win?
Yes.
And there's a runoff.
If every Democrat votes, we'll be fine. If every Democrat votes, we've got the votes. We need to get out the vote and make sure that we're making sure that everybody votes. Yes.
I walked into this meeting because I had done several days of research knowing this. And the good news is we do not have 3 Democrats running on our side. We have only 2. And see me afterwards if you know about the third, and we'll tell you about that one. The second good news that I was told tonight is that there is a minor other Republican running. So there are 2 and 2, which makes me a little bit happier.
Yeah. Yes, Patricia.
I just want to make a statement that I have received the polling, the most recent polling, and what we do have is Monica Montgomery Stepp as #1 and Amy Reichert as #2. So,
Does
even though
anybody?
we may think less of the one that's, the Republican that's running, that's where the polling is right now. So,
Amy Reichert, for those of you that don't know, she was really big at Oktoberfest. And Max and I had a little fun. And he was my political son that day. And we went over to the Reichert campaign and talked to them and pretended to be stupid and not know anything. It was easier for me than him. So we asked her supporter, who's a very well put together, middle-aged, twin set in pearls kind of lady. And I said, what are her Max said, what are her qualifications? And they said, well, she's a woman and she's a mom. That was it. How many of us are women and moms? I don't feel that I'm prepared to be on the Board of Supervisors. That's what they've got. That's what they're working with. So we need to strike out and make sure that not one Democratic vote gets left behind. Make sure I will do everything I can within my power to get the Go Team going and get us out walking. Hey, you know, we need to walk this year. We walked last year, but you know, our legs are healed from last year, so we can walk a little more. Also, if there's any quick announcements, we've got 15 minutes. Patricia, you said earlier you wanted to make a quick announcement about
Yes.
Juneteenth.
Can I just stand right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to remind everyone that La Mesa Juneteenth is having their first event their first annual. As you remember, for those of you who attended last year, we were hoping to get 250. We got 1,500, over 1,500 people in attendance. We got full coverage from KUSI, ABC, NBC, CBS. They all came out, and we got the front page of the UT the very next day. So it was all positive, and everyone is excited about this year. We have a lot of newcomers that have come on board, donors and participants as well. We're expecting over 3,000 people this time. Please come out and support us. Bring your friends, your family members, your children. We actually got a donation from the San Diego County. They donated these huge, I've never even seen bouncy houses this big. It's incredible, and you just kind of stand there in awe thinking, I'm afraid to get in that thing. You know, but they have donated for us, so now our Family Fun Center for that portion has grown exponentially. So we're gonna put that in the back where we feel like the kids will be safer anyway. But there's gonna be the MLK choirs coming back, and for those of you who attended, you'll remember that everybody stopped in their place when they sung. And we also had a soloist who also sang. And we have more of that. We have more singers, more entertainment, more vendors, and more food. Thank God we have more food. That was the hardest thing, and still the hardest thing to get. But we ask you to come out, bring your friends and your family members, bring your children. The tears that we saw last year were from the children whose parents were dragging them out of the Family Fun Center. That was the only tears. It was a lot of fun. We're expecting for that to be even more fun, and we've tried to add more things and make things better. And we ask you to please come out and support it.
Where is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's going to be on June the 18th, because that's a Sunday, and we have to do it at MacArthur Park. It's from noon to 4. And I realize that it's Father's Day, but it was Father's Day last year, and we were worried about that people wouldn't come, and we still got over 1,500, and we were only expecting 250. So bring your dad, you know, just bring them. It's in between breakfast and brunch and dinner still, so just come out, spend some time with us, and help us celebrate the Jubilee. Thank you.
Katie, where are we on the 50-50? $38. If last chance, we're gonna have a few quick announcements and then we'll pull a number.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Doug Case, and I am the Political Affairs Director for Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, and I'll be very brief because tonight is growing late. The major thing happening in Sacramento right now is the state budget. June 15th is the constitutional deadline for passing the budget, and has to be in print by next Monday. And the Pro Tem is heavily involved in the budget. The budget negotiations take place with the Pro Tem, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the chair of the Assembly Budget Committee, and the governor. This year, instead of a $97 billion surplus, we're dealing with what is now a $30 billion deficit. And so there's a lot of negotiations that are going on this week, and I'll come back next month, hopefully, with a good news in terms of what we were able to do to protect our safety net programs. I talked last time about several of the senator's bills. All the bills in our bill package have passed through the Senate by the deadline, and they're now in the Assembly. They include the bill to provide greater transparency in our jails, to replace the LGBTQ travel ban with a nationwide program to change hearts and minds, especially in red states, and programs that would allow, or legislation that would allow physician assistants to perform first trimester abortions, and legislation that would protect California healthcare providers who perform abortion services or gender affirming care to residents of other states. And so hopefully they'll make it through the Assembly, and I look forward to coming back and giving you updates. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute. Trinity, start charting me.
Okay. I just first want to say that I am proud to be a San Diegan because folks like Janessa Goldbeck and Monica Montgomery Stepp are running. I'm not sure ever that there's been a female majority on the County Board of Supervisors. So this will be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to that, like outside the chamber, all the photos, the new one being put up. And anyway, you're both very inspiring, and I'm just humbled to be in your presence. So my name is Nadia Farjoud. I am a candidate for the Grossmont Healthcare District, Zone 3. Most people ask, what is that and what does it do? And it's probably because a Republican has been in the seat overseeing La Mesa for the past 20 years. And what it does, the mission of the Grossmont Healthcare District is to provide healthcare and wellness programming for East County residents, and also to support the Sharp Grossmont Hospital in meeting community needs. So the Grossmont Healthcare District Board operates as a landlord. I'm a healthcare attorney and have been for many years, and I look forward to the opportunity to serving in this important role to help address some of East County's biggest healthcare challenges, including ones we talked about tonight, like gun violence and also the opioid epidemic and mental health. So my name's Nadia Farjoud, and I'm running for the Grossmont Healthcare District Zone 3. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kathleen Brand. I'm a resident of La Mesa. In La Mesa, if you know, the City Council and their Planning Commission, it is a position to be on a board. You are appointed by your council members. And I am asking for your support or your acknowledgement and emailing our council members, specifically the Democrats, there's 4, and asking them to support me for Planning Commission. I am a city planner and a landscape architect. I am integral in the city of San Diego, working on affordable housing, working on in interesting land use planning, and that's what the Planning Commission does. So please support me, email our council members, and ask for them to appoint me to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Name. Oh, Brianna Costa, I'm sorry, Kathleen Brand. Sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm trustee Brianna Costin. I am a board trustee with the La Mesa Spring Valley School Board. I am here, I came to the meeting last month to give a little bit of an update on our district and wanted to do the same thing this month. So I came to you last month regarding the district's refusal to recognize Pride Month, Juneteenth, and to fly the Pride flag. And I have a little bit of an update for you, not a good one, but a little bit of an update that we, at our board meeting on Tuesday, had a lot of support from the community show up and express their voices around, why it is important for school districts, especially, all of our school districts, to be supporting LGBTQ+ youth. And I also want to just give a couple of other updates. We passed a grade span change in our last meeting, so our elementary schools will now be TK through 5th grade, and our middle schools will be 6th through 8th grade, starting not this coming school year, but the following school year. And Doug's update about the budget. We also have to pass a budget, and our budget has to be passed by the end of June. So we will be passing that at our June 20th meeting. So we have about 5 days in between the state budget getting passed and our budget being passed. And so that I'm hoping that a lot of the cuts, that the $30 billion deficit has to do with education and is going to affect education, and I'm hoping that there are minimal impacts to the effect of education.
One question? Yeah. Would you give us just a one sentence about why pre-K and H4?
No, we have to be out of the room in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, you can talk offline.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Okay.
Going along with, my name is Wadad Doubleday, going along with the La Mesa Springs, Spring Valley things that I heard from the superintendent, where I'm not talking this much. Okay, I want to remind everybody about the Santee Pride Parade on Saturday, June 10th, from 12 to 2 p.m. And gather at noon and leave at Santee United Methodist Church on Magnolia.
Thank you. Okay, Trinity, you didn't buy any tickets, right?
No.
No, get up here. You're Jessica Watch buying
If you
tickets.
don't pick your parents, you're grounded.
I'm too old, you can't ground me.
I know. I thought of that before I started.
828-899. I'll repeat it. 828-899.
Oh, you've got one. All right.
Oh, yay.
Okay, there is some food left over. Please help yourself, and we've got to-go boxes there so you can take the food with you. We can't leave any of it here. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month at the park.